After 10 long years of anguish, the family of Kentucky native Paige Johnson is celebrating the arrest of the person they believe is responsible for Paige's murder.
And now he has to, and everyone knows what I've known all along. I've been waiting for this day for almost 10 years, and it's a very happy day.
The family says from the day Paige went missing on September 23, 2010, at the age of 17, they've suspected the person who last saw her, Jacob Bumpass.
I filled up with so much joy when I found out he was arrested, because I've known from the very first day that he knew where she was and he wouldn't cooperate with us.
The only way that I know how to explain it is like a complete and total state of euphoria. I'm just so elated that he's finally been arrested, because we've always known from the beginning that he was guilty, but we could never call him a suspect.
Paige disappeared after going to a party with Jacob Bumpass. After the party, Bumpass says he dropped Paige off at this intersection in Covington. Paige was never heard from again, leaving her family and her then 2-year-old to wonder what happened to her.
Mr. Bumpass's cell phone never pinged off of any tower in downtown Covington. So there's no indication, at least, that his cell phone ever went to the area of 15th and Scott, where he claimed to have dropped Paige Johnson off.
While his story troubled investigators for years, Bumpass was never charged.
No one has been honest with police about their interactions with Mr. Bumpass, what he said, what he may have told them, where he may have been. His own family, his friends, his relatives have all thwarted police investigations at a number of different turns.
The case went cold, leaving Johnson's family to worry and wonder. Finally, in March, after nearly 10 years since she was last seen, Johnson's mother got the call.
I've been wanting to bring my baby home for so long, and now I get to.
Ohio's Claremont County Sheriff's Office said they were contacted by a person who said they found human remains in a wooded area. Police said Johnson's body was found near Williamsburg Township in the neighboring state of Ohio, about 30 miles east of where she was last seen. Investigators say they arrested Jacob Bumpass July 28th in Claremont County, Ohio, for tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse.
The tampering charge carries a possible penalty of up to 3 years in prison, and the abuse of a corpse charge carries a possible punishment of up to 1 year in prison. So Mr. Bumpass is facing up to a total of 4 years.
Officials say the case is still under investigation.
It is obviously possible that additional charges could come in the future, and certainly, if appropriate, and if the evidence ultimately develops, it would be our hope that someday we can pursue a homicide charge.
The family is hoping more charges are coming.
And he put us through so much pain. And I'm so thankful to God that he got the cuffs put on him and got put behind those bars.
Took 10 years, but finally some charges, but no murder charges. But let's take a look at the crucial evidence in this case, and a lot of it has to do with cell phone evidence of Jacob Bumpass. Let's take a look at a map. On September 23rd, 2010, Jacob Bumpass said that he dropped Paige Johnson off at 15th and Scott Street. That's in Covington, Kentucky, around 1 a.m. But his cell phone never pinged in that location. His cell phone did ping around 1 a.m. in Florence, Kentucky. Then his cell phone pinged near East Fork Lake between 4:15 and 4:30 a.m., okay, about three and a half hours later. On March 22nd, 2020, Paige Johnson's remains were found in Claremont County, Ohio, just 1.5 miles from where Bumpass's phone pinged near East Fork Lake. So that's putting him close to where her remains were found and in a different place from where he said he was. Okay, let's bring in our special guest. Joining us tonight to talk more about this in Cincinnati, Ohio, criminal defense attorney Patrick Mulligan is with us. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
You know, the big question in this case is when and what will it take for them to bring homicide charges here? Because right now you're talking about tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, using that cell phone evidence to put him in the location and to, you know, undermine where he said he was. But what do you think it takes to get this case to the next level?
Where we are right now is simply with an indictment on lower charges. And as you well, only probable cause, so it's a pretty low standard. In order for them to get to a homicide, they would need to be able to show cause of death, I would think. And then more importantly than that, they would need to show that he was responsible for these acts. And so that's a pretty high burden for the state. And ultimately at trial, they would have to do that beyond a reasonable doubt.
So what connection? Can you have a trial for tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse and go through with that trial and then have a subsequent trial for homicide if they develop more evidence down the road?
Yes, because the lesser charges here do not prevent further charges from coming. In other words, it's not a double jeopardy situation.
So my guess is this, to move this case forward, you either have to develop evidence from the defendant himself, some statement that he may have made, an admission to someone who may know something, or you've got to get some sort of forensic evidence. But 10 years later, I don't think that's going to be necessarily possible at this point.
I think that's a really difficult task for the government. And Mr. Bumpass, of course, has experienced legal counsel who I'm sure has instructed him that he has the right to remain silent, and he should do that, quite frankly. So I don't expect them to get anything additionally from him that they don't already have.
So he's facing right now up to 4 years. Do you think there's any room for a plea that would include homicide charges, maybe at a very reduced amount of time? But do you see the defense sitting down at the table even talking about that?
There has to be a open communication before you can have those sort of negotiations, and that would require a disclosure of what we call discovery. That is all the evidence that the government has. Typically, these negotiations will occur if the government's case was strong, but from what the public knows, which would be me, quite frankly, because I'm not a party in the case, I don't think that they're there yet.
So how do you think this trial plays out? I mean, is this a case where the defendant is no way going to take the witness stand because there's the possibility of these other charges, so he'll most likely have to sit silent during this initial trial for the tampering and for the abuse of a corpse because you don't want to give prosecutors any opportunity to even question the defendant about what happened?
Without knowing the discovery, that would be my inclination, because I don't want to expose him to cross-examination if I'm representing him. So that would be a correct theory.
All right, Patrick Mulligan, Cincinnati, Ohio, great criminal defense attorney. Appreciate your time and your insight tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to continue to track this case. And look at this. We've got a case review coming up in May and a trial date for September 27th. So, of course, anything changes, you'll hear about it right here on your front row seat to justice.